with some thoughts on the analysis of disinformation, which is provided by Guy Debord in his text. Really nice, brief but potent text. I don't know if you can see it there or not. Guy Debord, his comments on the Society of the Spectacle. Comments on the Society of the Spectacle. The Society of the Spectacle both being his work, the Society of the Spectacle, which is that came out in the 60s. It's part of the Situationist movement, and the Society of the Spectacle in which we find ourselves ensconced. But more particularly, where I want to offer some, basically some approbation of Guy Debord's analysis is in his treatment of disinformation, which is most extensively found in, it would be section 16 of the text. And it's one of those things, it would be very tempting for me to just read the section, because it's so replete with just juicy tidbits. But I will content myself with simply reading the first paragraph. The relatively new concept of disinformation was recently imported from Russia, along with a number of other inventions useful in the running of modern states. It is openly employed by particular powers, or, consequently, by people who hold fragments of economic or political authority in order to maintain what is established, and always in a counter-offensive role. Whatever can oppose a single official truth must necessarily be disinformation emanating from hostile or at least rival powers, and would have been intentionally and malevolently falsified. Disinformation, then, would not be simple negation of a fact which suits the authorities, or the simple affirmations of a fact which does not suit them. That is called psychosis. Unlike the straightforward lie, disinformation must inevitably contain a degree of truth, but one deliberately manipulated by an artful enemy. That is what makes it so attractive to the defenders of the dominant society. The power which speaks of disinformation does not believe itself to be absolutely faultless, but rather that it can attribute to any precise criticism the excessive insignificance which characterizes disinformation, with the result that it will never have to admit to any particular fault. He goes on from there, and there's two other points which he makes then. Well, there's more than two, but I just want to point out two other gems along the way. One of it is very simply this, and then after I read this in one more sentence, then I'll talk a little bit, right? If occasionally a kind of unregulated disinformation threatens to appear, in the service of particular interests temporarily in conflict, and threatens to be believed, getting out of control, and thus clashing with the concerted work of less irresponsible disinformation, there is no reason to fear that the former involves other manipulators who are more subtle or more skilled. It is simply because disinformation now spreads in a world where there is no room for verification. That's really the crux there. Disinformation now spreads in a world where there is no room for verification. And finally, he notes, additionally, disinformation is actually inherent in all existing information, and indeed is its main characteristic. It is only named where passivity must be maintained by intimidation. Where disinformation is named, it does not exist. Where it exists, it is not named. All right, so just I threw a bunch out there. It's a bit dense, some of it. I don't think it's impenetrable, but what I found impressive, and it stands out more clearly if you read the whole section, which is like, I don't know, maybe 5 pages, is that in contrast with the temptation to see disinformation as a claim as to the truth claim, as to the truth value, if you like, of a given proposition, to put it after the fashion of like the analytic school, it is more concerned with the characterization of those who advance that claim and a kind of imputation of malefactive intent. So what counts here is the following. Number one, it's the truth or the facticity or the reasoning of any advancement, which is characterized as disinformation by the establishment, if you like, is not actually concerned with the accuracy of what is in the crosshairs. It's rather an attempt to derogate the people who will put forth what is characterized as disinformation. And it's derogating or denigrating them in or on multiple planes. There is the bare issue of relative facticity, relative accuracy, etc., and that is that's certainly part of the equation. It also is a slight, to put it diplomatically, of people who are inclined to believe the disinformation as themselves either disposed to conspire with some dishonesty or as being deficient in their own faculties, as being fundamentally stupid, right? So the third level, or an additional level, I'm not iterating these in a particular state of priority because it all kind of happens at once, is the suggestion of a definite us-them dynamic. So not only are people who are said to be disinforming either dishonest or manipulative, and the people who are inclined to trust them daft or of a similar ilk. Moreover, they are people who are outside of the project of society at large. Because what they're putting forth is, in one way or another, at odds with the interests of the established state of affairs, with the spectacle, if you like. And consequently, at odds with the ultimate aim of the current state of affairs, which it will brandish as generally quietly utopic. Oh, these people who disinform are enemies of democracy or science or what have you. And often, by the way, when you look at those sorts of terms, you realize that they themselves have a sort of plasticity. They sort of exist at the margins of precise definition, which makes them convenient for the sorts of manipulation which are being perpetrated when the category of disinformation is being brought into play. So, to round this up in terms of like what I think is to be taken from Debord's analysis, which actually is more expansive than what I have gone over here, is that we should be attuned to the fact that the charge of disinformation has very little to do with the truth of any assertion. It's actually a kind of clue that there's something interesting going on which people in power would rather have you overlook. or to put it more brusquely, almost polemically, you only get flack when you're over the target. And I just think that that's it's an extraordinarily valuable way of looking at that category, disinformation, the related category of misinformation, and it connects to other matters of concern as well, such as what constitutes the project of our society. Certainly, the past few years have been especially illustrative as to the hazards of taking the charge of disinformation at face value, having led as it did to just really just all kinds of trouble, to put it far too politely. So minimally, I think just being aware of the take that Debord takes on disinformation, I would then proceed to encourage you to look at the whole book itself, which expands on that and other things to a rich degree, and back to his concept of the society of the spectacle. But just a little something I wanted to put out there, at least for today, and thank you for listening. Okie dokie, guys. Catch you on the flip.